I am somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody.
We are in the midst of a major drive to get more members, more people engaged and involved in Rainbow Push, supporting the programs of Push for Excellence and the Citizenship Education Fund. If you're interested in public policy and you want to help change the policies that impact those incarcerated, change the policies that impact students attending colleges and universities, if you want to be a policymaker, then you need to join Rainbow Push and join by paying your $35 right now. Some of you watch us every week. You listen to us on the radio. You're viewing us in social media. We need you to become a member. It's only $35 a year. If you believe in the scholarships that we give to thousands of students each and every year, we've awarded more than $10 million to scholars year to date. What do you have to do to give and support Push? It's really very simple. You can go to rainbowpush.org if you're on a computer and press donate. Give any amount. Every dollar is important. You want to talk to somebody, call us at 773-256-2775. You can give right now, any denomination that you choose. You can text the word PUSH, P-U-S-H, to 41444. Text on your cell phone. Most of you have a cell phone. Just text PUSH, P-U-S-H, to 41444. And you can give any amount that you feel comfortable giving. Or call us 773-256-2775. Or go to rainbowpush.org and just press donate. Wherever you are, you can support us as we keep pushing for you.
Hi, I'm Todd Yeary here outside Dr. King's workshop, the Rainbow Push headquarters, where people of goodwill from all walks and all places gather as comrades in the movement for justice and equality. Social justice movements have been birthed in the imaginations of people in places just like this. You can be a part of this justice movement too. Join Rainbow Push as we fight for justice in the 21st century. Go to rainbowpush.org or dial 773-FREEDOM and remember, keep hope alive.
Dr. Kim, I went to jail with a group of 7 students, July 17, 1960, almost 60 years ago. We never stopped moving. I lost a few of jail cells and death. We never stopped moving. I thought it was time to write some of it down so the older generation can learn how we did, and what we did, and how global it was. Whether speaking about Mandela in South Africa, India, Qatar, about Gandhi in India, here at home. This book tells the story, so please get it and give it to your friends. Read it, let's argue about it, let's discuss it.
Yep, so the book is Keeping Hope Alive, Sermons and Speeches of Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. It's quite a good collection. You know, we've got sermons and speeches from around the globe because you have made such a global impact, not just here in the US, but around the world.
This is Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. The coronavirus pandemic is serious. You cannot keep hope alive if you cannot stay alive. The coronavirus pandemic is serious. Keep worship in place. Keep your family safe. Have a blessed and holy season. Keep hope alive.
My name is Bradley Ross Jackson, and I will recite I've Been to the Mountaintop by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I want to say tonight that I too am happy that I didn't sneeze. Because if I sneezed, I wouldn't have been around in 1960 when students all over the South started sitting in at lunch counters. As they were sitting in, they were really standing up for justice. I too am happy that I didn't sneeze. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around when Negroes decided to straighten their backs up. And whenever people straighten their backs up, they are going somewhere. Because a man can't ride your back unless it's bent. I too am happy that I didn't sneeze. If I had sneezed, I would not have had a chance in August of 1963 to tell America about a dream that I had. Now you all remember. Oh, I have a dream today. I too am happy that I didn't sneeze. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountaintop. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. And so I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord, and we as a people will get to the promised land.
I am Dr. Sonia Whitaker, National Education Ambassador for Push Excel and Rainbow Push Coalition. I am also the Deputy Superintendent of Schools for Dalton Riverdale School District 148, located in Riverdale, Illinois. On behalf of Reverend Jesse Jackson and the Rainbow Push Coalition, we'd like to thank you so much for your gift of time. And while we have prepared to present to you today and a group of esteemed panelists, we are very cognizant of the fact that there are many experts in the audience listening in today. And for that, Reverend Jackson is forever grateful. I want to share with you that we have had an overwhelming amount of interest in this town hall. And as a result of that, there will be a part two. We've made some small adjustments, again, as a result of that, and that's positive. So in addition to there being a part two, we are hosting an education summit, and that will be held virtually on June the 9th, 2020. So please do be on the lookout for that. The title of this theme is Education in the Era of COVID-19. And in an effort to set the stage for you for what is to come tonight, I'd like to present to you the following information briefly. As we're aware, 56 million students in America's schools today are now at home receiving education virtually. And this has occurred as a direct result of the nation's attempt to prevent the spread of coronavirus. So what does this mean? I want to give you a quick snapshot of what this means as it relates to a conversation that we're going to have tonight relevant to access. I'll pause so you can let this graph resonate in your spirits. Today, this graph represents the percentage of students in households with no internet or computer access by income, as is evident at families whose household incomes ranges between $50,000 and less. They are least likely to have access to a computer or internet. The graph that you're looking at now represents the percent of students in households with no internet or computer access by race. as is evident, the students that have the least amount of access during the time when a greater majority of their learning experiences have to occur remotely are African American and Hispanic students, with American Indian and Native Alaskan Indians being impacted the greatest. With regards to students with disabilities, as many of us are aware, school districts are required by federal law to provide all special needs students with access to a free and appropriate public education, and school districts are provided to do so in what is referred to as the least restrictive environments. What does this mean to us today? For those of us that weren't aware, today there are 7 million students with disabilities attending U.S. schools. This number represents 14% of the total student population being remotely educated in the home setting, which is notably the most restrictive environments. And so, before I turn it over to Reverend Jesse Jackson, the spirit by which the presenters will present to you tonight, with their varying degrees of backgrounds, is united and aligned in response to this one simple yet very important question. And that question is, what does equitable access look like during and post COVID-19, particularly as it relates to the need to provide a quality education for all students, and more specifically, America's most vulnerable students?
Thank you very much, Reverend Jackson and Reverend Dr. Wilson, and thank you, Dr. Whitaker. I am honored to be here as we are kind of looking at a screen on Facebook, thinking about what we're still in the middle of when, the President of the United States pretends all is over, all is won, the pandemic is done, and we still know that we have not only unearthed and exposed most of the inequities in America in the last 2 or 3 months, but today, with almost 40 million people unemployed and with almost 100,000 people who have died, not numbers, but people who have died because of COVID, we are still smack dab in the middle of 2 emergencies, a health emergency and an economic emergency. And in that moment, what we, and something I don't have to say to you, but a health emergency and an economic emergency that has actually disproportionately affected people who are Native, Black, and Brown. So we've already seen that that 40% of the United States before this emergency couldn't put $400 together in an emergency, and now we have almost 40 million unemployed and over 100,000 people dead. We are trying, as the American Federation of Teachers, to do several things simultaneously in this COVID emergency. Number one, we are focusing on, like a laser, on the well-being of the communities we serve and the members in those communities. That includes most of the places in America where we see huge poverty and huge inequity. Number two, we are trying to focus on it like a laser on how we help the providers and how we make sure that they are provided for, including we just bought $3 million of PPE for people in hospitals, nurses, others who did not get this from their employers because Donald Trump has failed to do what he needs to do. Number three, in any emergency, in any downturn, the people who every single day come to public schools, their families, these are the people who are most hurt. We've already had 500,000 layoffs in education of those 40 million people. But we have to have the federal aid that is most directed to the people who need it most. So we have supported the COVID aid, and we need to support the HEROES Act and more. And number 4, obviously, we need to deal with how to safeguard elections in a time where the Voting Rights Act has been lifted and where Donald Trump talks about elections like vote by mail as if it was fraudulent. All of these things, all the values of voice and equity and democracy and how one deals with education, all of it is now embroidered in this crisis. So what we've tried to do is we've tried to help feed kids. We've tried to help get kids the digital information they need. We've tried to open up all of our ways of talking to people, including Share My Lesson and other things, to make them free for parents. We've tried to get books to kids who are homeless. We've tried to do everything we can as teachers turned on a dime to make sure that they were educating kids in this remote and very unsuitable kind of way, particularly when you have the digital divide, where in some places 40% of kids are not connected because the cable companies will not connect them. So we've tried to do all of these things, but ultimately we know we have to get kids back to brick and mortar schools. And that's why the AFT put together, after 4 weeks of working with public health officials and others, this Reopen Safely plan. And what it includes in it are things like, how do we actually deal with the summer slide? Maybe we can this summer, if it is safe, get kids who are most in need to school. Maybe we can do that. We need money, we need funds, but we need to try if it's safe. What do we do in terms of the fall? How do we make sure that kids who are most underserved get the social, emotional, and instructional resources that they need? How do we do things in a hybrid or blended environment that kids who did not have access to digital learning get that access? We need to work with community, because what will happen is, if we do not work together, we're going to see Donald Trump continue to say, just flip the switch. This is a false choice. No one wants to be locked down anymore. I am married to a rabbi. We don't want to have a situation where our congregation doesn't meet. We don't want to have a situation where we're home instead of connected. But it takes the kind of safety to ensure that the virus can't be transmitted in the absence of a vaccine in order to reopen and in order to ensure that our kids are safe and that they are emotionally well taken care of. So we need to work with all of you to do these kind of things. We know that people tried their damnedest, excuse my language, to make remote education work. We know for some kids it did. But ultimately, next year is going to have to be a year of bridging, of ensuring that the kids who are most behind get the most, of ensuring that we get the funds so that states whose funding is now crashing, that they don't cut kids, they don't forfeit our future. There's going to be a lot of work to do next year to ensure that people and our children get the kind of instruction and the social emotional attention they really need in the aftermath of this very scary and this very uncertain time. And we are honored to work with you on this.
Thank you, Jesse Jackson, for all you've done over the years, and for Rainbow Push Coalition for bringing us together a few days after the anniversary, the 66th anniversary of Brown v. Board of Education. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about the disproportionate number of deaths in the Black community caused by the COVID-19, and the universal conclusion is that they're a result of underlying pre-existing conditions. And not getting as much attention, but we've been talking about it today, are the underlying pre-existing conditions in education that have been exacerbated by the pandemic. I mean, you just say achievement gap. Everybody knows what you're talking about. Had the chart on distance learning, and we know what the problem is. But rather than talk about the problem, let's talk about the solutions. Dr. Whitaker talked about the GAO report that talked about school segregation. That report, I'm familiar with it because John Conyers and I asked for that report to be done, and it showed that the segregation in schools today is about as bad as it was in the 1960s and getting worse, both by not only by race but also by class. We have legislation to deal with it. One is on Title VI, to amend Title VI to give a private right of action to people to bring lawsuits on patterns of discrimination, to appoint a secretary of assistant secretary of education designated for Title VI situations. And just like you have Title IX, every college has a designated person on Title VI to make sure that there's no discrimination going on. When the coronavirus started and schools closed, Congress took action. The first thing we did was to notice that when the schools closed, children weren't getting their meals. A lot of students get most of their nutrition from school meals. And so we provided waivers and funding to make sure those meals could be delivered at home. That's nothing new. It's what the school systems do every summer and make sure that the students can be fed even though the schools are closed. We funded early childhood education and Head Start. Early childhood education is so important that if you miss that opportunity, you never get it back. So if the schools are closed, we wanted to make sure those opportunities were still there. In K through 12, flexible money to address the problems, flexible, so that each school could deal with the problems of achievement gap. We heard about the summer slide, summer programs, teacher training. A lot of teachers weren't trained to do distance learning, and flexibility, particularly in things like special education. And we heard the funding for colleges. One, a lot of the money has to be spent on students who thought they had room and board covered through the end of the year, and now all of a sudden are looking for apartments and trying to feed themselves. Money has to go to support the students, but also money for keeping the campus together, trying to keep the faculty on board and everything else. Additional funding, significant funding went to HBCUs and other minority serving institutions. And for those with student loans, that was a problem before the pandemic. We made sure that there no student loan payments need to be made between now and September 30th, and no interest accrues during that period of time. But we know more needs to be done. And the first thing we recognized is that state and local governments are suffering from revenue shortfalls. Virginia showed this when our budget was done right before the pandemic, and several weeks later they came back for the normal veto session where we consider vetoes and amendments to the governor after revenues had been reforecast. And teacher raises were set aside. Money for low-income schools set aside. Counselors set aside. Hundreds of millions of dollars in school construction, a lot at HBCUs was set aside. Counselors, all of these initiatives set aside. So if we don't restore funding for state and local governments, doesn't matter what else we do for education, education is going to get cut. And so we restore money for state and local, but then we add another $100 billion for HBCUs and other minority serving institutions and other colleges, and flexible K through 12 money for things like special ed, summer programs, and everything else they need to make sure that we eliminate the achievement gaps and give an equitable education to our students. We made sure that teachers got essential worker pay, significant increase in funding, and that student loans, the relief we gave till September 30th, goes for an additional year. Now that bill has passed the House, and I noticed on the screen my distinguished colleague, Representative Castro, a member of the committee, that he and I have been working hard to make sure that that bill passed the House, but it now has to pass the Senate. Passing the House is not enough. It has to pass the Senate. And if so, education will get a significant boost and we'll be able to address many of the problems that have been discussed today. So Jesse, thank you for inviting me, and Dr. Whitaker, thank you for the opportunity to be with you tonight.
Thank you so much for affording me the opportunity to join this robust and very important conversation this evening. I'd like to thank Reverend Jackson and the entire Rainbow family for having the discussion. NAFIO is the National Association for Equal Opportunity in Higher Education. It is a 51-year-old association of the nation's 104 historically Black colleges and universities, and now roughly 50 predominantly Black institutions. We serve as the voice for Blacks in higher education. When we started this discussion, Reverend and someone else talked about evening the playing field. When will we know when we even the playing field, and what does equitable access look like? What do we need to provide quality? So as I was listening to this discussion, and as I have participated in lots recently, I'm reminded that sometimes to invest equally in people and institutions is not to invest equitably. And this comes to mind because as we're talking about what do we do in emergencies and crises as we are in presently, a lot of people have said, for example, we've got to double the Pell Grant and make sure that low-income students, wherever they are attending school, can get a double Pell Grant. And certainly doubling the Pell Grant will help, and NAFIO supports it, and everyone that I know supports it. It is an emergency, and it is something that should be done. But importantly, what we need to talk about longer term is establishing opportunity institutions. The nation focused on opportunity arenas, opportunity communities, and we need to talk about opportunity institutions and investing in those institutions that educate and graduate disproportionate percentages of low-income students. So if we have an institution that has about 75% low-income students, as do HBCUs on average, and 45% first-generation students, as do HBCUs. And if they have 1/8 the size of the endowments of the average historically white college or university, then we should talk about special investments in those institutions, special opportunity Pell investments in those institutions. An institution that has the highest endowment and the lowest percentage of low-income students enrolled does not need the same resources to thrive as do those institutions that are doing the lion's share of educating first generation and low-income students. And so as we talk about the agenda going forward, I would like the support of Rainbow Push and all of those in the viewing audience to join NAFIO in a discussion about and urging Congress to work with us to identify a class of institutions called opportunity institutions that are graduating the largest percentage of low-income and first-generation students. The second thing that I'd like to say just before my 4 minutes lapse are that I'm reminded by the discussion also the seminal importance of the census. As we're talking about solutions and getting dollars to our communities, when Congressman Scott, and I thank you so very much, Mr. Chairman, for your leadership in all of the things that we're doing as the chair of the Education Committee in the House. Congressman Scott was talking about school meals, getting meals to low-income families when they're out of school. I also thought about the Kellogg Foundation invests a great deal in school-based health. All of the types of programs and resources that we need, not just in the double emergency in which we find ourselves with the worst recession in recent years and with the worst public health challenge that we have, but at all times, the communities in greatest need must be counted so that we can make sure that they have the resources that they're needing and they're deserving of. So I'd like to urge everyone who has not already participated in the census to do that and circle back and just talk about how important no longer just looking at Pell Grants and attaching them to students, but look at the institutions that are educating disproportionate percentages of low income and first generation students, and making sure that they have all of the resources that they need to make their students thrive.
Graduation rates have varied from state to state and by race. As African Americans, we have lagged behind our Hispanic and white counterparts for decades. It is no coincidence. Our classrooms traditionally do not look the same. Our neighborhoods do not look the same, and we are constantly faced with educational and economic adversities on a day-to-day basis. We turn on the news and realize yet another Sandra Bland has been lost. We face the fact that we cannot jog down the street because we may lose our life like Ahmaud. It is barely hard for us to breathe because we realize that, like George Floyd, we still have to be educated in the midst of it all. So this pandemic is not the first thing that we have had to face as African American students, and it won't be the last. We are the proud graduating class of 2020. And as we move on to Hampton University and Michigan State University, we are proud to say that we are the results of Brown versus Board of Education gone proud.
Good morning. We are in the midst of a major drive to get more members, more people engaged and involved in Rainbow Push, supporting the programs of Push for Excellence and the Citizenship Education Fund. If you're interested in public policy and you want to help change the policies that impact those incarcerated, change the policies that impact students attending colleges and universities, if you want to be a policymaker, then you need to join Rainbow Push and join by paying your $35 right now. Some of you watch us every week. You listen to us on the radio. You're viewing us in social media. We need you to become a member. It's only $35 a year. If you believe in the scholarships that we give to thousands of students each and every year, we've awarded more than $10 million to scholars year to date. What do you have to do to give and support Push? It's really very simple. You can go to rainbowpush.org if you're on a computer and press donate. Give any amount. Every dollar is important. You want to talk to somebody, call us at 773-256-2775. You can give right now, any denomination that you choose. You can text the word PUSH, P-U-S-H, to 41444. Text on your cell phone. Most of you have a cell phone. Just text PUSH, P-U-S-H, to 41444. And you can give any amount that you feel comfortable giving. Or call us 773-256-2775. Or go to rainbowpush.org and just press donate. Wherever you are, you can support us as we keep pushing for you.
Brazil, now the second hardest hit country in coronavirus cases after the U.S., has more than 23,000 deaths. But some experts suspect the real number is even higher.
Today in Brazil, we have around 300,000 cases. And perhaps we have 12 times more.
Hi, I am Dr. Daniela Gomes. I am a visiting assistant professor of international studies at Trinity College. And I am here today to give you news about the COVID-19 in Brazil. Brazil is nowadays the epicenter of the COVID-19 and the coronavirus spread. We have more than 390,000 cases, confirmed cases of COVID-19. These numbers are not 100% real because they are only testing severe cases. So we probably have much more people who are contaminated by the coronavirus and went back home without any treatment. We have more, of course, than 125,000 people who recovered from COVID-19, and we have to share those news because they are special. However, we have more than 25,000 deaths because of COVID-19. In addition to the pandemic, Brazil faces another serious issue, which is hunger. More than 10,000 Brazilians live under the line of poverty. That said, with the situation of the quarantine and the close of a lot of business, a lot of Brazilians are unemployed. Also, many Brazilians have been working informally since our economy is not recovering from these past years of political instability and economic instability. So we have, on one hand, people who need to stay home because they have to keep themselves safe. But on the other hand, we have people who are concerned about what they are going to eat tomorrow and are actually depending on groceries that have been given to them by church, by religious organizations, by NGOs, by social media campaigns. So those problems are very serious. Why I highlight those? Because the pandemic, in addition to poverty, make some populations of Brazil more vulnerable to COVID-19. One, we have the indigenous communities of Brazil, more than 800,000 people who are highly affected by COVID-19, especially because there is no health care plan specifically to those communities. Some of those communities are very far from a hospital, right, are isolated, so they don't have a lot of resource there to combat. Same thing with Quilombo communities, where people are getting sick and they don't have the necessary treatment to avoid. The same we can say about the favela communities in Brazil, which are pretty much urban, but we are still talking about multi-generational families living in the same house, sometimes without a sewage system or water that would help to practice the precautions that we have to take care of now during the pandemic. We also have the peripheries of Brazil, so the expanded centers of Brazil, the metropolitan areas, where people are pretty much not following the quarantine guidelines. And a lot of them doesn't follow the quarantine guidelines because they think the disease is not that serious. Why are, with so many deaths, are people in Brazil still thinking the disease is not serious? Because of fake news and the positionality of the Brazilian president, who says that the coronavirus and the COVID-19 is just a flu or a cold, and refuse to create a lockdown or at least a quarantine that is going to be effective. He is still talking to people, going to his supporters, asking people to go back to work, even talking about reopen the places, the public spaces, even in the middle of the crisis. Right now, Brazil is facing the worst time for the pandemic. The fact that this man that is supported by so many Brazilians is denying the fact that the virus is very lethal, make more and more people wish to go outside and party and socialize. So those are a few of the numbers of COVID-19 in Brazil. As you know now, the US government decided to ban Brazilians from Brazil to the US. And we are going to keep you guys posted.
They used to say we were just 3/5 of a man, and we had to fight to be fully recognized. Back then, being counted meant marches, pickets, jail cells, and worse. One way you can show we count in less than 10 minutes is to take the 2020 census. Be a warrior for your community. Be counted and make certain adequate funds and political representation are allocated to your state and your neighborhood. Just select one of these easy options. By phone, call 844-330-2020, online at mycensus2020.gov, or simply mail in your survey. Never forget, you are somebody. Don't delay. Take the census today.
I am somebody.
The man who videotaped the killing of an unarmed black man, Ahmaud Arbery, was arrested on Thursday as the third white suspect in the racially charged case. William Roddy Bryan Jr. was charged with felony murder and attempt to commit false imprisonment of Arbery in the February shooting. That's according to a statement from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. The footage has sparked outrage from civil rights activists who see it as the latest incident of U.S. law enforcement allowing white perpetrators to go unpunished in the unjustified killing of a black man. Bryan previously came forward as the man who recorded a video of Arbery's murder. He turned the footage over to investigators before it was widely spread on social media earlier this month. The video showed Arbery jogging in Brunswick, Georgia, before being confronted and shot to death by two armed white men, George McMichael and his son Travis. Both men were arrested and charged with murder earlier this month. The state attorney general is investigating local police and prosecutors' handling of the case. Bryan's attorney, Kevin Guff, could not be immediately reached for comment on his arrest. Bryan's attorney has told the media that his client has no relationship to the other two suspects and told police he was a bystander to the confrontation.
Hey, Rainbow Push family, this is Attorney Gerald Griggs with the NAACP, here to provide you with an update on the Ahmaud Arbery case. And many of you know about the case and some of you are just new to the case. So on February the 23rd, around 1:07 p.m., in Brunswick, Georgia, Scintilla Shores neighborhood, a young man who was 25, about to be 26 years old, went for a jog and was accosted, confronted, and ultimately shot 3 times by Travis and Gregory McMichael, while William Roddy Bryant was following and recording all this. And since then, the NAACP and a lot of grassroots organizers have been organizing around this case and supporting the family of Mr. Arbery to get justice. And since that time, 74 days, almost 75 days later, an arrest was made after the release of the explosive cell phone tape that many of you have seen, where you start to see Mr. Arbery jogging down the street, William Roddy Bryant following him, and then ultimately the McMichaels making contact and shooting Ahmaud Arbery 3 times, leading to his death. And so since then, there's been a lot of movement. There's been several major rallies in the community, both by the community, by lawmakers who are now pushing hate crime legislation, and then of course the arrest. And there are more protests that are being planned. And what we need is support from the national level for all of these grassroots organizers, these state level organizers, and of course nationally. We want a coalition of individuals with eyes around this case so that we can make sure that all parties that had something to do with the prolonged length of time it took to get justice, that means the 3 district attorneys' hands that this went through, being Jackie Johnson, George Barnhill, and Tom Durden. We want thorough investigations into the handling of the case from the beginning to now. And then we want support moving forward for a successful prosecution of Travis and Gregory McMichael and charges against William Roddy Bryant. So wanted to provide this update of the case. There will be bond hearings coming up that have not been set yet for the McMichaels. Hopefully there will be an arrest warrant issued for Mr. William Roddy Bryant, and that we can continue to engage and make sure that there's justice in this case. Some of the important and key components, the Brunswick chapter of the NAACP under the leadership of John Perry was the first on the ground to help this family to elevate their voices because of COVID-19, because the case happened back February the 23rd, and then it took a substantial amount of time to get the information out that helped make this case go viral. And so we're reaching out to organizations like Rainbow Push to give you updates so you can know in real time how you can help, how you can get involved. Right now, there's a push by many organizers to make sure there's a thorough investigation by the GBI and the FBI, so you can join in that call. You can also join in the movements that are happening on the ground. There will be numerous protests calling for the resignation and the recall of George Barnhill and Jackie Johnson, so you can get involved with us with that. But mostly you can continue to have conversation around this case so that we can move it from arrest to indictment and then indictment to trial, because many times these cases lose momentum because people lose an understanding of what's happening on the ground and how they can get involved. The easiest way to get involved is at I Run with Maud, the hashtag, or at the website runwithmaud.com. You can also go to the Georgia State Conference of the NAACP at nacpgeorgia.org to get involved, to make sure you understand what's happening. There are numerous coalitions that have formed. The Just Georgia Coalition has formed with numerous umbrella organizations that do work in Georgia around these issues, but we really need national organizers. That's why we're thankful for Reverend Jackson. We're thankful for Rainbow Push getting involved and getting engaged and allowing us to provide this update. So what's happening now? There have been arrests. There's going to be a bond hearing at some point. We're in a judicial emergency here in Georgia, so there cannot be the convening of the grand jury until at least after June the 13th, when the judicial emergency is lifted because of coronavirus. Once that happens, there will again be a national call for organizing to prepare for the trial, to go to every single day of the trial. And so those are the next steps, but we need people to stay engaged, to stay on the hashtag, to go to the website, to support this family emotionally, spiritually, and all other ways that you can support them. But staying engaged is the most important thing. So I can commit to bringing you updates when you need them on the case, as far as where we are, as far as the organizing and how you can stay connected and involved. Stay in tune with the Georgia NAACP as national continues to support us, and we're asking for national Rainbow Push as well as the other branches to assist us in this organizing. It's going to take every single civil rights group, every single grassroots group, every single group that believes that Black Lives Matter and that believes that we need justice in this case to stay tuned. So thank you for allowing me to have this platform of Rainbow Push. I'm Attorney Gerald Griggs, a justice fighter, the first vice president of the Atlanta chapter of the NAACP, and I look forward to connecting with you as we move for justice for Ahmaud, justice for Maud, justice for Maud. I run with Maud.
With tensions boiling following the disturbing death of a black man at the hands of Minneapolis police, today the mayor of Minneapolis is calling for the officer who held George Floyd down to be arrested.
Why is the man who killed George Floyd not in jail? If you had done it, or I had done it, we would be behind bars right now.
Now, amid ongoing protests, leaders are asking for peaceful demonstrations.
Protest, be heard, but be safe. Because destroying property or getting innocent people hurt is not what we want. And it takes away from Mr. Floyd.
George Floyd's final moments were captured on this disturbing video, handcuffed on the ground, begging for air as a white police officer digs his knee into Floyd's neck.
Please, I can't breathe.
Minutes later, he would lose consciousness, the officer keeping his knee in place as EMTs arrived. Police say Floyd was taken to the hospital where he later died. The 4 officers involved in the arrest now fired.
It's sadness. It's sadness because it didn't have to happen. Because all I had to do was just take his foot off his neck and it would have never happened.
Tuesday's protest began at the same intersection where the incident happened. Peaceful demonstrations escalating into altercations with police, who deployed tear gas and non-lethal rubber bullets. With more demonstrations planned today, the activist group Freedom Now is calling for justice, but also peace and patience, saying the decision to fire the officers is a victory, but unfortunately the wheels of our justice system oftentimes turn slowly.
Every 10 years, the U.S. Census gives communities across America the chance to get the funding they need. But there's a catch. The money is based on counting an accurate number of residents in each state. The fewer people we count, the less money Illinois gets. Illinois has received nearly $60 billion from the federal government based on numbers from the last census. Every person who doesn't fill out the census means less money for Illinois. That's money we could use for new school programs to help our children thrive and succeed, for building new bridges that would help you travel safely on your morning commute, for paving roads and ensuring more reliable public transportation, and for improving our hospitals and clinics so everyone gets the best health care. In Illinois, we deserve our fair share, and it starts with all of us being counted. Visit my2020census.gov or text 987-987 to learn how you can fill out the census today.
We are calling for our officials to open up the doors, let people out so they can social distance. Let us in so that we can bring the much needed supplies and things that our people need. Let us be in relationship with one another so that we can keep people safe.
And I'm simply here to say that it is criminal and unjust for inmates, not to mention the workers in our jails, to be given a death sentence because they are either in jail, yet they have yet to receive a hearing, a trial. They have not been convicted, but they are primed for a death sentence because our jails, sadly, shamefully, and sinfully have become the new incubators for COVID-19.
People in jail who are inmates who test positive, not been, everybody in jail should be tested. Test everybody who worked there, because as many people who work there get sick as those who are in there. They bring it home every day.
New York is a current epicenter of the coronavirus, with cases climbing past 100,000.
CDC reports more than 9,000 healthcare workers have been
More than 30 million Americans have filed for unemployment.
In just 2 months, the coronavirus has killed more Americans than the Vietnam War.
And during this historic time, we need to love one another.
Hey, Tavon, it's your mom. I was just calling to check up on you, making sure you're doing okay. I also wanted to remind you, you can only love your neighbor as much as you love yourself. So make sure you're taking care of yourself. Make sure you're protecting your mind. I love you. Bye.
For my brother, for my sister, for my cousins and my lovers, all God's children. This is for these streets. This is for the weak. If you're feeling down, come on now, come and listen.
We need to love one another, need to hug one another. We sell drugs to each other. A brother will say love you, but he'll still kill you. That right there, dog, will be the end of us, but this will be the hell of us. I got the blueprint, how I'm gonna save us. I have the blueprint, how I'm gonna make it. And everybody back home, I ain't forget about you. Don't focus on the current, it will drown you out. And if you lost in the hood, you can't get out. And it's the world's savior, watch me walk it out. Story of my life that I'm about to talk about. How we go from being kings to fiends and now to dreams. Just to be a trap star. And many times go down that road and they didn't get far. And if you tired of the stressing, let this be a lesson. Love is the answer to the question.
My brother, for my sister, for my cousins and my lovers, all God's children. This is for these streets. This is for the weak. If you're feeling down, come on now, come and listen.
Dear America, what did destroy heritage? You took our history, changed it, and then you buried it. And I'm just curious, why won't we be like Paris skin? It's the same way Sammy Sosa wanna bleach his skin. Like they painted Jesus Christ as a white man. Around and around we go, where the love at? And when you look in the mirror, do you love that? Self-hatred, displacement. funny how the hate take on different faces, and how happiness can get you through the mazes. And when you come out, you on top. And keep moving on, cause the hate don't stop. You gotta help yourself to get the love back. You gotta help yourself to get the love back. You gotta help yourself to get the love back. Now where the love at? Now where the love at? Yeah. My sisters and my brothers, love one another, oh yeah.
Dr. Kim, I went to jail with a group of 7 students, July 17, 1960, almost 60 years ago. We never stopped moving. I lost a few of jail cells and death. We never stopped moving. I thought it was time to write some of it down so the older generation can learn how we did and what we did and how global it was. Was speaking about Mandela in South Africa, India, Qatar, Gandhi in India, here at home. This book tells the story, so please get it and give it to your friends. Read it, let's argue about it, let's discuss it.
Yep, so the book is Keeping Hope Alive, Sermons and Speeches of Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. It's quite a good collection. You know, we've got sermons and speeches from around the globe because you have made such a global impact, not just here in the U.S., but around the world.
Thank you for tuning in to our International Saturday morning broadcast. We need your support. Here are ways to give to Rainbow Push Coalition. Text PUSH, P-U-S-H, to pound 41444 to support the work of Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. and Rainbow Push Coalition. When you shop, Amazon gives. Visit Amazon Smile and select Push for Excellence as your charitable organization by starting your shopping at smile.amazon.com.
Get involved with the movement.
Somebody. I may be poor, but I am somebody.
Join the movement.
If you're not a member, become a member.
I am somebody.
Fighting the most important battles for freedom and justice for all.
You made us change. Oh, try to bring closer.
Join Rainbow Push.
But you're not pushing me away.
Join the movement. Join Rainbow Push.